Welcome to the Upper Blackrock Spire in-depth dungeon and quest guide for both Horde and Alliance. Per usual, timestamps for quests, complex trash pulls, strategies, bosses and their respective loots, and how to properly gain your attunement can be found in the comments below. Congrats to the previous video's contest winners, Ashley Hall and Toscani J. If you'd like to participate in this video's giveaway, scroll down to the comments below. The upper segment of the Blackrock Spire contains the last of the forces of the Old Horde. With the aid of Nefarian and the Black Dragonflight, the Blackrock Orcs have been able to combat not only the forces of the Alliance and Horde, but also of the Blackrock Dwarves, who they unwillingly share the mountainside with. We're tasked with wiping out the remainder of the Blackrock Orcs along with their newfound Draconid allies. Upper Blackrock Spire is our first major introduction into the late game of Classic. Being our only 10-man dungeon in the game, the Spire will teach us some of the coordination needed to enter Onyxia's lair in Molten Core. You'll even find yourself here for some quests involving the Molten Core, as well as for the attunement of Blackwing Lair during Phase 3. If you're here for the attunement of Upper Blackrock Spire, I've gone through the questline in another video, but I'll also cover it in this video. As mentioned before, the dungeon is located in the Blackrock Mountain, found here. There's a fairly nice shortcut you can take to get into the dungeon, showcased on screen. Raid composition can vary highly, but I'd highly recommend against bringing a paladin tank here, as it's tough to avoid aggro on some pulls without a taunt. If you have a geared group, you'll want 1 tank, 2 healers, and 7 DPS. Make sure you have a good amount of crowd control though, as the last few pulls can be tough, even if the tank is well geared. If your group is not well geared, you'll want 2 tanks, 2 healers, someone who can off-heal, and the remainder being DPS. The recommended levels are 57 to 60, but you can enter as early as level 45. Here's the attunement guide. If things sound off, it's because this was taken from the lower Blackrock Spire video. Final quest, we'll need to have looted an unadorned Seal of Ascension dropped from nearly all of the orcs within the dungeon. It's a little difficult to explain exactly where our quest giver Valen is, thus I'll have a clip leading to him at the end of the video. Valen will offer those that find him the quest Seal of Ascension. You'll need to complete this quest if you plan on going into the Upper Blackrock Spire in the future. Seal of Ascension requires us to collect 3 gemstones. Gemstone of Spirestone from High Lord Omok, Gemstone of Smolderthorn from Warmaster Voon, and lastly, Gemstone of Bloodaxe from Overlord Wyrmthalok. Return to Valen and he'll give you a much more complicated follow-up. For the second part, we'll need to head to the southernmost cave in Dustwallow Marsh. There we'll find a dragon named Emberstrife. With your group, you'll need to damage Emberstrife down to about 15%. At this point, you'll want to place down the Unforged Seal of Ascension. Continue damaging Emberstrife to 10%, then stop. At this point, you'll want to use the Mind Control Orb to control him. Use Emberstrife's first ability on the seal found on the floor, and that should craft the key. Kill Emberstrife off, collect the key, and return to Valen to gain access to the upper portion of the Blackrock Spire.
What do you need? Strength.
Starting off our Horde quests, we have the follow-up to Vivian Legrave's lower Blackrock Spire quest. Vivian's new quest, the Darkstone Tablet, simply sends us to the Rookery to collect the Darkstone Tablet. Just be careful of the whelps. Next up, we have the continuation of the Warlord's Command quest chain, which I discussed in the lower Blackrock Spire guide. From Thrall, we can pick up For the Horde, which simply tasks us with heading into the Spire and collecting Rend Blackhand's head. This quest rewards some amazing trinkets, so I'd highly recommend completing it. There are 2 more quests within the dungeon which proceed after you complete For the Horde. This questline also takes you to your Onyxia attunement, so I'll cover it as best as I can, but know that there will be a more in-detail guide in the Onyxia raid guide. Our first quest from Thrall will just have you listen to his tale. Afterwards, he'll send you to Desolace to hunt down Rexar with the quest Champion of the Horde. After patrolling around Desolace and asking where Rexar is in general chat, you find the half-orc, and he gives you the follow-up Mistress of Deception, sending us to Miranda the Hag, found here in Western Plaguelands. Miranda will give us Oculus Illusions, which sends us back to the Upper Spire to retrieve 20 Black Dragon Spawn eyes from any of the Dragonkin mobs found in the dungeon. Don't worry though, that's not the end of the questline. Once we return to Miranda, she gives us Emberstrife. For this quest, we'll want to head to Dustwallow Marsh and find Emberstrife's den, found here. Equip the amulet you're given, and Emberstrife will offer you a chain of quests. In the interest of saving time, each quest and what to do is on the screen, but all 4 are kill quests and send you to various portions of the world, so you're pretty much doing the same thing over and over again. I'd recommend a party for each of the quests, as the quest mobs are quite difficult, and you can even complete these in a raid if you can form a group large enough. After killing the final dragon, Ember Strife will give us Ascension, which wants us to talk to Dracasath, but we know our disguise won't work in the Spire, so we head back to Rexar instead. Upon returning to Rexar, at long last, he gives us the final quest of the chain, Blood of the Black Dragon Champion, sending us into the Spire to kill General Dracasath. Do this and you'll not only have completed this long and arduous questline, but you'll also be attuned for the Onyxia's Lair raid.
Hey there. See you around.
Starting things off, we have Doomrigger's Clasp from Mayara Brightwing in Morgan's Vigil. Like the Horde counterpart, this quest sends us to the Rookery to collect Doomrigger's Clasp. Unlike the Horde quests, you'll receive a follow-up that sends you to Stormwind to collect your reward. Our next quest, General Dracasath's Demise, is a continuation of General Dracasath's Command, which we collected after we killed Overlord Worm the Lock. This quest requires you to form your raid and slay Dracasath. This quest drops fantastic trinkets, so make sure you get it done. The final Alliance-only quest is the 15-part Onyxia attunement. I'll cover this portion briefly, but know that a better attunement guide will be available in the Onyxia's Lair raid guide. We start things off from Helendis Riverhorn and Morgan's Vigil. She'll offer us Dragonkin Menace, which will send us throughout the Burning Steppes to kill a variety of dragons. Some of these dragons can be quite tough, so I'd recommend forming a party. Return to Helendis once done, and she'll send you to Lakeshire to speak with Magistrate Solomon. Solomon will send you to speak with Bolvar and Stormwind Keep with the quest The True Masters. Once you've spoken to Bolvar, he sends you back to Solomon in Lakeshire, and once you've done that, you'll be sent back to Morgan's Vigil to speak with Marshal Maxwell. If you thought you were done playing Messenger, you're wrong, because Maxwell will send us north to speak with Ragged John. At this point, you'll want to start forming a group together, as Ragged John will give you Marshal Windsor, which will send you to the first area of the Blackrock Depths to find Windsor in his jail cell. Continuing our mission of Errand Boy, Windsor will send us back to Maxwell with the quest Abandoned Hope. Now while it seems like the questline ends here, you'll want to head back to Blackrock Depths and kill mobs until one of them drops the quest item Crumpled Up Note, which sends you back to Windsor's jail cell to speak with him. Windsor will finally ask you to do something exciting with the quest A Shred of Hope, tasking us with gathering lost information from General Angerforge and Golem Lord Argylmok. When you return, you'll be able to start the infamous follow-up, Jailbreak. Before starting the quest, make sure everyone in your party has turned in the first portion. Windsor is fairly weak, so make sure the tank is keeping all mobs off of him at all times, as he can't be targeted with healing abilities. It helps if you clear out all the mobs in the surrounding circle outside of a cell, as well as in the Ring of Law. Once you've completed the escort, return to Maxwell at Morgan's Vigil. Maxwell will then send you to the Gates of Stormwind, where you'll meet with Windsor. At this point, you should form a raid of anyone who's willing to join. After a brief walk to the Stormwind throne room, you'll find that Onyxia is actually Lady Prestor. A grand fight will ensue. After you've defeated all of the Dragonkins in the room, Bolvar will send you off to Winterspring to a cave found here. You'll need a group to get through the cave as it's full of elite dragons. Upon reaching the end of the cave system, step on the blue glowing circle to be teleported to Haley, who will finally give us the quest we need for the Upper Spire. This quest, Drakefire Amulet, requires the Blood of the Black Dragon Champion from General Dracasath. All of our neutral quests begin from inside of the dungeon, unless you're a blacksmith. There are two quests I will not cover in this guide, as I've already covered them in the Skullman's guide, and both pertain to the Dawn's Gambit questline. After we slay Ren Blackhand, on a small ledge in the next room we can find a small dragon named Abi. Speak with her and she'll offer you the Matron Protectorate. This quest sends you to Haley in Winterspring. She continues the questline for some gear that I've shown on the screen, so if you don't need any of these items, you can pass up on finishing the chain. Once we slay the beast, if you have a Skinner in the group who also has Finkel's Skinner, which can be dropped by the beast, Finkel Einhorn will pop out. Similar to Abi's quest, Finkel will send you to Maleficus in Winterspring, where you'll have the opportunity to create the items shown on the screen. Go on with the chain if you require any of these items. There's one final quest we can pick up from Duke Hydraxis in Ashara. You'll need to complete two prerequisites, Stormers and Rumblers, which tasks us with slaying 15 Dust Stormers and 15 Desert Rumblers, which are both found in northwestern Silithus, and Poisoned Water, which will send us to the eastern Plaguelands to kill 12 Poisoned Water Elementals and have us use a quest item on them. Once you've completed those, Hydraxis will give us Eye of the Emberseer. This quest sends us to the Spire to slay the first boss, Pyroguard Emberseer. Collect his eye and return. If you're a blacksmith, you'll have one more quest from Lorax in Winterspring. Lorax will give us the Demon Forge, tasking us with slaying Gorlak Anvilcrack found above the rookery, using the bloodstained pike on his corpse, and then collecting the unforged, rune-covered breastplate found behind his body. Return to Lorax and collect your mediocre rewards. When we enter the dungeon, we'll want to head up the steps, unlock the door, and slay all of the enemies in the Dragon Spire Hall. Once you kill the last one, the doorway in the far corner will unlock. Follow it through and slay the Incarcerators to summon our first boss, Pyroguard Emberseer. Emberseer is fairly simple, and for the most part is a tank and spank. He'll use a Flame Buffet, which deals minor fire damage and increases the fire damage taken. He'll also use Fire Nova, which deals area of effect fire damage. And lastly, he has a Fire Shield, which also does area fire damage, but to a smaller scale. Keep your distance to avoid the area damage, and this fight should be easy as pie. Next up, we have the infamous Rookery. Move slowly through the room and pop only the eggs you deem necessary. If you're planning on pathing up, just follow the path to the stairs. If anyone in your party needs any items off the optional boss in the room, then path to the left and hug the wall. Click on the Father Flame Crystal and be prepared for an onslaught of enemies. For the most part, this is a simple gauntlet, but kill off any hatchers you see as they'll break the eggs, summoning more whelps. After a few waves, Solakar Flame Wreath will spawn. Solakar has one ability, War Stomp. This will knock back and stun for a few seconds. Have any raid members that would normally be in melee range face a wall as to avoid pulling any other adds, but otherwise that's all he does. Once we head back up the stairs, if we turn into the first hall, we'll encounter our next boss and the target of the blacksmithing quest, Gorlak Anvilcrack. But before I get into him, beware of the surrounding mobs. If your group pulls any summoners, they should be killed off immediately. The most dangerous mobs in this room are the Flame Scales. Interrupt their casts as they can easily wipe a group out. Now, onto Anvilcrack. Another boss with little to worry about. He has a Heroic Strike, which does bonus physical damage, a Head Crack, which slightly reduces stamina, and lastly, a Backhand, which stuns for 2 seconds. None of these abilities are incredibly concerning, as such, you'll have an easy time getting him down. He can be skipped, but I'd recommend killing him as he drops a few pre-raid best-in-slot items. In the same room as Gorlak, we have a chance to find the rare Jed Rune Watcher. Jed is also incredibly easy and drops a best-in-slot trinket, so don't pass him up. Jed's first ability is Charge. The only time this could go off is if the tank loses aggro, but this should not be happening if you have 2 tanks. He also has Shield Bash, which will interrupt casting, and lastly, Heroic Strike, which increases the damage of his next attack. Hopefully you haven't gotten used to how easy the bosses have been, because after Jed, things become a bit more challenging. Once we enter the arena, be prepared for a gauntlet. From the gate on the far wall, orcs and dragons will keep spawning. Tanks will want to split the dragons and orcs into different groups, as the orcs can be crowd controlled. Your party will want to kill off Flame Tongues and the other dragon-named mobs as quickly as possible, and then move on to the spawned orcs. After a while, Rend Blackhand will emerge, riding his dragon, Gith. Gith should be faced away from his raid, as he primarily uses cone abilities. He has a Corrosive Acid Breath, which will reduce armor and deal high nature damage to those in front of him, as well as a Flame Breath, which does high fire damage in a cone in front of him. Lastly, he'll stun. Tanks should swap aggro on Acid Breath and stun. At 20%, Rend will jump off Gith. The off-tank needs to quickly grab him. The group should finish Gith off and swap over to Rend. Rend can be tough, especially if your healers could not conserve mana throughout the encounter. Rend should also be faced away from your party as he'll cleave. He also has a Thunderclap and Whirlwind. Both of these abilities hit fairly hard. Ranged players should keep their distance to avoid this damage. If healers were able to maintain their mana throughout the encounter, you should be able to take this duo down without too much trouble. Further into the mountainous keep, we can encounter the Beast. The fight against this Corehound can be fairly tough. All casters should be at max range, and Fear Ward as well as Tremor Totem are invaluable here. The Beast has an unavoidable charge, in which he'll choose a random raid member and charge them, dealing damage and knocking back. He'll return to the tank afterwards, so try not to change positioning. Quite commonly, he'll use Immolate, which just does fire damage over time. The two abilities that make his fight difficult are his Flame Break, which deals fairly high area of effect fire damage and knocks back, and his Fear. If the raid stays at max range, this fight should only be difficult for melee. Stay focused and we'll be able to proceed onto our final boss, General Dracasath. Dracasath is by far one of the hardest bosses we'll encounter in a dungeon. You'll see two guards on either side of him. There are two strategies that make the fight much easier. If you brought a hunter, the hunter will grab the general and run all the way to where you fought the beast, and then use Feign Death, while each tank grabs a chromatic guard. The other strategy, if your group has better gear, is to chain fear one of the guards, while one tank holds Dracasath and the other holds the guard, burning the guards down first of course. As for Dracasath, he has area of effect galore. As with nearly every other boss in the dungeon, face him away from your party as he'll cleave. On top of this cleave, he has a Flame Breath, which basically does the same thing, but with fire damage. He also has a Thunderclap, which hits quite hard, and lastly a Conflagrate. Healers should focus heal this target, and the group should distance themselves as the target will take a large amount of damage while also emitting an area of effect around them. As long as your party can get through the guards, this fight should be relatively manageable, and should also be a good introduction to the raids to come. Thank you very much for watching, and thank you to my Patreon Nibs, as well as my 2 YouTube members. And as always, have a fantastic day.